Maybe you're carrying a mistake that happened years ago. Not a huge mistake, not the kind that makes headlines. Just a decision. A path you took, a path you didn't take, a version of your life that never happened. And every now and then, your mind returns to it. Usually late at night, usually when things are quiet, usually when there's nobody around to distract you. And the question appears again: what if I had chosen differently? For some people, it is a relationship. For others, it is a career, a dream, an opportunity, a move, a risk they didn't take, or maybe a risk they did take. The details are different, but the feeling is often the same: a quiet grief for the life that never happened. The strange thing is that most of us don't just regret mistakes, we judge ourselves for making them. We don't simply say, I made the best decision I could with what I knew. We say, I should have known better. And maybe that's where the real pain begins, because hidden inside those words is an impossible expectation. The expectation that you should have possessed today's wisdom years ago, but you couldn't. The person you were then didn't know what you know now. The person you were then hadn't lived what you've lived now. The person you were then hadn't learned what you've learned now. Yet somehow we hold our younger selves accountable for information they didn't have. Imagine meeting your younger self face to face, not the polished one, not the wise version, the actual version, confused, trying, doing the best they could. Would you really look at them and say, you should have had it all figured out? Probably not. You'd likely feel compassion. You'd see how hard they were trying. You'd see the fears they carried, the uncertainty, the pressure, the loneliness, the hopes. You'd see a human being doing what all human beings do, trying to find their way. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned a dangerous lesson. The mistakes are evidence. Evidence that we are careless. Evidence that we are behind. Evidence that we are not good enough. Evidence that we are failing. But mistakes don't actually prove any of those things. They prove something much simpler. They prove that you were alive. Alive enough to choose. Alive enough to risk. Alive enough to move. Think about it. The only people who never make mistakes are the people who never do anything. Never risk, never love, never create, never try, never step forward. Mistakes are the price of participation. Yet many of us spend years trying to eliminate them completely. We become careful, overly careful. We research longer, wait longer, analyze longer. We tell ourselves we are being responsible. Sometimes we are actually being afraid, because if every mistake feels unforgivable, eventually every decision becomes terrifying. The problem isn't the decision. The problem is the meaning we've attached to getting it wrong. Maybe that's why some people stay stuck for years. Not because they don't know what to do, because they believe the cost of choosing wrong is too high. But life was never designed to be navigated with perfect information. Nobody gets that. Nobody. Not the successful people, not the wise people, not the confident people. Everyone is making choices from an incomplete map. Everyone. The difference is that some people give themselves permission to learn along the way, and others keep waiting until certainty arrives. The cruel joke is that certainty rarely arrives first. Action creates clarity. Experience creates clarity. Living creates clarity. And sometimes the path you were meant for only becomes visible after you've walked several paths that weren't. I know that's hard to accept, especially when you're looking back, especially when you can see the years, especially when you can imagine what might have been. But maybe the purpose of your life was never to avoid every wrong turn. Maybe the purpose was to become the person who emerged because of them. Think about who you are today. your wisdom, your compassion, your understanding, your resilience. How much of that came from getting everything right? Very little. Most of it came from struggle, confusion, disappointment, failure, loss, wrong turns. The experiences you wish had never happened often become the experiences that shape you most deeply. That doesn't mean you have to like them. It doesn't mean you have to celebrate them. It simply means they were not meaningless, and neither were you. Maybe your inner child has been carrying a heavy burden, the burden of believing they were supposed to get life right on the first try, the burden of believing every mistake cost too much, the burden of believing they were permanently behind. Tonight, maybe they need to hear something different. Maybe they need to hear, you were allowed to get it wrong. You were allowed to be confused. You were allowed to change your mind. You were allowed to choose badly sometimes. You were allowed to learn. You were allowed to grow. You were allowed to be human. And perhaps the next chapter of your life doesn't begin when you finally forgive the mistake. Perhaps it begins when you finally forgive the person who made it, the younger version of you, the one who was trying, the one who was hoping, the one who didn't know yet, the one who deserved a little more grace than they received. And maybe that's what your inner child has been waiting to hear all along. If this felt like a conversation you needed tonight, stay a while. There's always a seat for you here. And if you'd like more conversations like this, subscribe and join us again tomorrow.